Now, this is going to be a little bit of a different walkthrough than I normally do, because this is going to end up being trimmed for most of this walkthrough. Um, I was sent this by the lovely Miss Jamie. It is called the Dream Dust Shamanic Tarot, and I believe that this had some problems with it and the deck was kind of replaced, although I haven't really seen any major problems with it. But I have been using this deck and I've really been enjoying the art for this. It is very much abstract art, which is something that I do enjoy. I didn't used to enjoy abstract art as much, and I don't enjoy abstract art as much in oracles, but in tarot I actually really do enjoy it, because then what happens, if it's done well, is it becomes very functioning like a beautiful, spacious pip deck, in that the colors and the movement, especially if they do invoke the general message of the card, but it leaves space for my understanding of the cards. At this point, you know, I do have a pretty set way that I approach tarot as a system. I have pretty set ways. Of course, I'm always learning, but I still have a pretty solid way in which I understand the archetypes of the majors. I use the numerology and the numbers with the elements, and then layer in what I know from other systems in tarot. And so I have a pretty solid grasp of the way that I personally read tarot. As you know, if you follow my channel, that isn't strictly a Rider-Waite-Smith. I didn't learn to read off of Rider-Waite-Smith, and it's not my base, or it's not where my default is. I bring in those imageries, but I don't need the cards themselves to be able to bring in those imageries. So what I find in a really well done pip deck is that it leaves space to be able to read the cards and interpret the cards the way that I do. And so when a well done abstract art deck, it enhances that spaciousness, because again, the imagery of the cards and the colors of the cards should speak, if it's well done, as this deck is, should speak to this. Now, it is not everybody's cup of tea. You know that the Margaret Peterson Tarot is one of my soul decks. I use that a lot for healing work, and that is, some people have a hard time with that one because it is more abstract, although that does have has more figures and things in it than this does. This would be what I would, you know, it's very much an abstract art deck. But I really enjoy those types of deck, especially for things like healing and going deep. And so I appreciate decks that leave the space open. And this is something that this deck does really well. Now, one of my major problems with this deck is that it is way too big. This was the same problem that a lot of people had with the original El Goliath. I actually like a meaty deck now and again, and sometimes there are images that just need to be large, and I love the size of these images, but it is very difficult for me to shuffle. And I consider myself somebody who has decent size hands for a woman, but I don't even feel like I can't do the corners as well as I can some decks, because there's really not the flexibility there. So it's a combination of being too big, and you know, good, thicker, a little bit thicker cardstock, and then probably the gloss as well on it, that just makes this extremely difficult for me to shuffle. So I also don't particularly love keywords on the bottom like this, and I also find it to be such an elemental deck that the white borders, to me, I'm not a fan of it. Kind of takes away from some of that for me personally. Again, the deck creator, she, you know, or he or she, Sue Kovacs, creates the deck that is meant for her and how she wants it, and they are beautiful. But in order for me to not just have this sit on on a shelf, but because I kind of don't grab it as often as I think I would if it was easier for me to shuffle. And so there's not much I can take off, right? And so you think, oh, that's not really going to be enough to do anything, but I think you would be surprised. I have had other decks in which I've taken what doesn't seem like a whole lot off, and it really opens up the ability to shuffle. So this is only the second deck. I know the Japardea Tarot I trimmed not because I didn't like the way it looked, but because I couldn't shuffle it comfortably, and I really loved that deck. And so this is the same way. So I'm actually, you know, you're going to be seeing this walkthrough after I have trimmed it down. But I did want to at least film this quickly, so that you could see what they look like. They have white borders around them, they have the titles at the top, and they have a message at the bottom. So for example, for the Sea Sprite, learn to dream, welcome the new, an energetic, creative young soul, a messenger, be open to the unexpected and unusual, and so forth. So they have quite a bit of text. I mean, it's small, but they do have quite it's not just a couple keywords. They have a message down at the bottom of the card. I mean, that's just gorgeous. I love the images of this deck. But I'm going to, and this is going to be a tricky one, because what I would like to have happen is to cut off the 3 sides and leave the top, but it is gold gilded, and that means I'm going to have to shave a very small bit off of the top is what I'm going to try to do. Otherwise I'm going to have to cut it down and write it on like I have my image of the Marielle is that way, where it's cut down and it's handwritten on the card. So we'll see what happens, how well I can try to just shave off the tops of the cards. So I'm just working my way through this, but I thought I would show you what it is looking like. I know it's probably too bright, but it's a beautiful fallish sunshiny day. Cold but beautiful. So you can see that you know, it's not a major difference. I do like the way the colors pop, but the big thing is the size. And again, I know, you know, I figure you've got 78 cards, and there is a big difference between handling this, which my hands can get around. Now it's not going to be as much when this is big, but it does make a difference. Here, for me, again, this may not be an issue for anybody else, but for me personally, usually when it's this size, you're working with an oracle deck and there's not as many cards. So I think it's the combination of 78 cards, thicker cardstock, and the really big size. So you can see how much that I've taken off with the way I'm doing it, that takes off of the sides. So this is, you know, so that this is going to be usable for me, because I actually do see myself using this deck. I just feel like it's too much, and I also like the way the colors really pop when you remove the white borders. Would I have removed this if this was smaller? I don't know. This isn't 100% yes. I don't, well, yeah, I probably would have, because I'm really not a fan of you know, that many words on the bottoms of my decks, but so who knows. But I wanted to just quickly show you how I'm doing this. You could obviously do this 2 ways. You can just use a slide cutter or a guillotine. If you have a guillotine, I think are better. The thing that I don't like about the slide cutter, and I'll do this one that way. So the things that I do like about it is that you have this bar edge that you can line up the artwork with, and you're going to get one nice straight, because these aren't perfectly straight, so I'm going off of the artwork, one nice straight cut, right? Takes you a little bit, it takes me a little bit longer to do this, because, you know, I'm fiddling with it to get it lined up correctly. And then because there's gold on the top, I'm having to go in and obviously take just a hair. So I'm literally trying to take the least amount that I can take off the top. I don't know if you could see that piece. Let's see if I can get it out. It's literally just a sliver to get the gold off, and sometimes I'm missing it on the corners, but it doesn't matter because those are getting trimmed. So then I have this trimmer. It's actually not my favorite trimmer. I need to repurchase my favorite trimmer, which is the 3 size one that is at on YouTube. oh my goodness, on Amazon. But what I like is the 1/4 inch. And so this is a Crocodile corner chomper that I got a 40% off coupon at Joann's. And so it was actually quite cost effective. And really the only one that I use is the 1/4 inch usually. So I'm really, you know, until this one dies, I'm probably going to stick with it. And it's pretty solid, so I can't imagine it dying. What I like is that you can see, hopefully, that this is a pretty similar, just maybe slightly bigger. It's so hard to get a, maybe slightly small. This is maybe slightly bigger than the original, but it's pretty close in terms of the corner. I don't really like large corner rounds. I actually like how these looked squared, but I know that those are gonna, those tend to, over time, I don't want to shuffle these because, oh, I shouldn't have done that one. Well, we skipped to the Earth Shaman. All right. I'm trying to do these in order because I obviously want to do a walkthrough once it's all done. But, yeah, I'm really happy with how it's turning out. But so that's one way to do it. Truthfully, the way that I'm generally doing it is with scissors. I do like a good scissor because try to take one cut, not 2 cuts like that. You have to on the long edge. I'm pretty good with scissors, so I really don't have much of a problem here. I find it easier than taking the time to line up this thing right here, but for this then I'm sticking it on here, and again I'm really just putting it so that I'm just shaving off that top tip, and usually I'll do a few of these. And then I'll switch to, I'll do a few cuttings and then I'll switch to corners. And it just kind of gives your hands a break from doing one thing over and over again. I am prone to carpal tunnel, so I do kind of pay attention to mixing up what I'm doing and not continually doing the same thing over and over again with this hand. So the reason that I like this over this is, if you could feel this, which you can't, when you use this cutter here, and I think it's better with a guillotine, it forms kind of a lip on the other side as it's pressing in to cut. Is the only thing I can think of that causes that. So it forms a bit of a lip. You don't get that with scissors. So you're kind of losing the preciseness, right? Because you do get such a clean straight line. I tend to cut pretty straight lines, so I think this is really going to come down to whether or not you know how confident you are in cutting with scissors. Now you are always going to get, you know, it's not going to be perfect. And it depends on the artwork. Some of them are darker and it's really easy to find the line. Some of them have lighter sides and it's a little bit more difficult to find the line, like along this type of an edge, and so you have to be really looking. So these are not going to be perfectly straight like a, you know, it's being cut out by a machine, and so you have to be comfortable with that. If that's something that's going to drive you nuts, this probably isn't a deck for you, or this isn't probably something you should be doing. You can really see when you have two next to them that are machine, and you can't see it, that are smashed a little bit, it starts to form like a lip like that, and I really don't like that. So that's why I switched back to scissors. I will also say that when you cut edges like this, it will never quite shuffle the same. Now some decks it doesn't affect it as much as other, but especially I feel like with thicker cardstock, it will never feel quite the same when you're shuffling it. And so if that's something that is really going to bother you, again, then this probably, I think of like the old Druidcraft cardstock. My first edition of the Druidcraft, and it was the very first one that I ever trimmed. So obviously some of it may also have been lack of trimming very well. but it was thicker cardstock, and once it was trimmed, it really never riffle shuffled very well. It's only, I think, matters when you are a riffle shuffler like I am, but it never quite riffle shuffles the same again. It's like I have left a little of the gold on the corner, but that's okay because it is going to get trimmed off when I do this, but I'm going to do a couple of these. So, but then the second edition, the newest edition of the Druid Craft, I went through and trimmed that, and I love how it looks because I obviously know what I'm doing. I have a better corner rounder. And so that one looks great, and it shuffles great. It's a little bit thinner cardstock. And so even though I've trimmed that all up, it still looks amazing, and more importantly, it shuffles still really well. So it really depends on the cardstock, and I think that the longer that you do trim things, the more that you kind of know what works and what doesn't work, and what's, you know, what cardstock's going to have problems when you're trimming it. This is really a great card. So yeah, I just thought since I'm doing this, I would go ahead and come on, and because people, you know, I put these on a lot of different videos, but it's been a while, and then people tend, you know, if they're newer to the channel and they haven't seen a trimming video, then it's like, okay, well, how do you do that? How do you particularly do it? And I think maybe my issue that I have with the slider would be reduced by using a good guillotine. Like, you need to pay decent money for it. And certainly the same thing goes with scissors. Having a good set of scissors also goes a long way in a good cut. But again, for recap, the reason that I like scissors over this slider is that you don't get that ridge that is created by the cut. And the only reason I'm using this here is because I'm really just trying to shave off that gilding, but I don't really want to take much off. So, okay, I thought I would show you this while I was doing it, and I'll be back once I have these done, or something else random that I think you might want me to babble at you about. I will point something out because this is the first time I've done it. This is not normal. Like, I'm not normally trying to shave a top off like this to keep the text intact. So this is not something I've ever done on a deck. But you can see when you're doing that, it's no precise way to do it. And so I took off, as soon as I did it and saw it, I thought, ooh, I took a little bit off more than I wanted, right? Didn't go into the text at least, but you know, that is going to make that a little bit shorter than the rest of the deck. Again, you just kind of have to be okay with imperfection. If really things not being exactly lined up is going to bother you, then this probably is something that is going to be more stress than it's worth. And so I would, you know, take your own personality trait into account and make sure that you know thyself. The other thing is in terms of edging it, because I am going to edge this deck. I had thought about, okay, well, I could do like a dark purple or something like that. Like I could do maybe this color, although this isn't a vibrant purple, so I don't think it would actually be the best ever. And this is this the new Tombow? Yeah, but this is not purple. So I think I'll probably go look for something, but I'm thinking all of my, what I would call shamanic, this calls itself shamanic or animistic or earthy, kind of that really lean into my own personal practice. Most of them, now the illuminated earth is different. I did that all gold tone, like a muted gold tone, but all of my animistic style decks that sit out on my earthy altar space, those I always do with mixed colors. So I go sort of, I don't have a ton of colors, but I kind of go off the color. So for example, I would pull out my pile of markers, and I would pull a color that would actually kind of match the card itself in some way. Or sometimes you can do suits, like you would do all of the suits in one, each in one color, and then like I like to do maybe the major arcana in purple. So you could do something like that. Maybe I need to get, you know, it looks like I need to do is, it looks like I need to, I wonder if I could do this with scissors. I'm going to try the next one with scissors. I might need to replace this pointy thing. I do cut watercolor paper on here, although I feel like I just changed this not too long ago. So I don't feel like it should be hanging up. Anyways, a lot of times I'll do like the major arcana in purple, because obviously I do yellow, usually yellow tones for air. I use red or orange tones for fire. I use blue tones or turquoise for water, and then I do green or sometimes brown tones for earth. So I'm going to just try this. I'm pretty good at cutting on the very edge, because that's a way to fix a mistake. If you kind of chopped in a little bit too much, you can sort of go back in and just really shave off just by putting it just barely on there and just kind of shaving off. And so I could maybe do the whole thing by scissors. We'll see. Now, see, this is an example of, especially with my eyesight, it's a little bit going to be hard for me to really watch that I make sure, even using this, I'm having to really try to see where that corner lies. So I'm going to kind of trust the straightness, and I haven't found this deck images to be perfectly straight, but I'm going to, on this one, kind of trust that it is fairly straight, because it's just really hard. I think I'll mess it up. Looks like this is really difficult. So I'm going to go eyeball it to the middle. So, Alexa, stop. I'm going to go to lunch with my daughter. I'm going to kind of eyeball it where I can see it in the middle, and I'm trusting the straightness there. And then you can kind of hold it up to another card and see, okay, are you really off? Like I could have probably come in a little bit, but it's not much, so I'm going to be happy with that. I can't decide if I prefer taking this. I mean, it's not bad. It kind of follows the gilding, I think. I might do that with scissors. So that would be another reason why, you know, having something like this is handy when you're doing this, because if you do get a card that, you know, it's great when they have like an inner border that makes it really easy to be able to see where to cut on. Like this is a dark card, super easy to be able to see it. But when it gets to be so pale, it gets to be very difficult. And again, everybody's eyesight is different. I don't have great eyesight, so it makes it even more difficult for me. And I can't blame it on old age, although it's gotten worse with old age, but I've always had bad eyesight. Okay, well, I am going to go back to doing this because apparently we're just gonna, otherwise we'd end up chit-chatting about absolutely nothing even longer. Again, I will try to make sure that I put a link to, okay, you want to skip all this stuff? Go straight here. I don't know why I'm doing this in this order. I have some reading to do with this deck, or I would like to use this deck. And so I really want to get it trimmed before I want to like go through the whole walkthrough. I've also, again, because I've already used this deck quite a bit, I don't know, I'm just anxious to get it the way I want it to be. So I'm doing it out of order. That's all right. there are, I'm sure, plenty of other walkthroughs with, oh, I can see right here, I forgot or really missed. Yes, I did not do the top of this, which means I'm going to have to retrim the corners. So I should check for that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tiny, oops, it's better if you get it in one cut, but you know, if you're looking for perfection, don't come to me. And then you can kind of round up that corner. There we go. Now, that's the major arcana. I like it. I really like the way that it looks, and I really like already, I can tell that it's going to make it easier to shuffle, and that's the important part. Okay, so now this is how we normally start out, right? A walkthrough. It is the way it is. Sometimes my walkthroughs are a little out of whack and out of order. So we're looking today at the Dream Dust Shamanic Tarot. You've already had a peek at what it looked like before I trimmed it. I have now trimmed it, and as you can see, and I also edged it. Now I know this looks pretty bold, right, when it's all separated out, but you'll find when these mix together, I think it's going to look really good. The green pulls in. I did kind of a green tone for earth. It's a very similar olivey tone as is there. I pulled in a watery, almost turquoisey blue color for water, a yellow for, oops, let's see here, a yellow tone for the air suit, and then of course the reds for the fire, and then I did purple for the major arcana. Of course, there's a lot of purple in the back. So we'll see. You'll see when I shuffle them all, this ends up not looking quite as bold as you might think. So never you fear. This is the only time this deck will ever be in this chunked up color like this. So this was a deck that was sent to me not for the purpose of review and not by the creator of the deck, but was sent to me thinking this would be a deck that I would enjoy using, and I have to say that I have. Oh, I can see, so I should have stood that up there, but if you stand them up, you'll see where you miss kind of color coding things. In this case, what I missed is that kind of fully trimming. Oops, let me grab these. We'll just do this right on live and in person, because I'm just trying to shave off that gold gilding at the top. There we go. That got kind of shaved off. What I need to do though is also, when you do that, you need to be sure that you kind of re-round the corner. There we go. And then this is a major, so I'm just going to re-purple that edge. There we go. The only place that's going to be a problem on, I don't think that was actually the right color. Let me see. Well, no, I think it was. I'm not sure. That's all right. It's not standing out, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. So yeah, its only problem on this deck is at the very top, and that's because, again, I was trying to trim off that gold gilding there. So, okay. Of course, now these are out of order. 12, 13. There we go. Okay, so I can already tell this is going to be a lot easier for me. It's still a very large deck, right? So if I compare it to a pretty standard tarot deck size, it is still quite a bit larger. I have just reduced it down even more so that I can obviously handle it a little bit better. And I also do think the colors really stand out and pop in a way that is just beautiful to me. So this is this is just personal preference. Truthfully, if it hadn't been so large, I don't know that I would have trimmed this. I don't know, you know, I would have had to use it and see, but it mostly was from handling, because I have used this deck quite a bit, and it's definitely a bit much for me to handle. So it comes in a gorgeous sort of like book box. Like, it feels like that material that's on hardback books. It feels really nice. It has a magnetic closure on it, and then it comes with a guidebook that has a small image of the card, the name, and then it gives you a little bit of information about the card, and then some keywords. So nothing really in depth. We'll read a couple of these just to see how we feel about it. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is that the court cards are different in this deck. We have the sprites instead of pages, the horses instead of knights, the goddess instead of queens, and the shaman instead of kings, which I think goes really well with a shamanic tarot deck. So I have no issue with that. And you're going to also see some changes in the major arcana as we go along. So let's just go ahead and dive into this. Here we go. So obviously we have the dreamer instead of the fool. Oh, I also wanted to point out, I like this at the beginning here. Gather out of stardust, earth dust, cloud dust, storm dust, and splinters of hail, one handful of dream dust not for sale, by Langston Hughes, Dream Dust. So obviously that was part of the inspiration for the name Dream Dust Shamanic Tarot, and I think it's amazing. So yeah, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Love it, love it, love it. Each card, she says, is a painting or a poem. Again, the artist and creator is Sue Kovacs. To read them, you'll need to have your own intuitive style, compassionate heart, a curious spirit, and a creative mind. My dream is that over time they will help you find magic in your world and teach you how to carry that magic with you, which I think is amazing. Okay, so we start out here with the dreamer, obviously instead of the fool. So this is abstract art. It is beautiful. It is evocative of the colors of the fool. It is evocative to me of movement. It is evocative of innocence. There is a brightness of spirit, of soul about it, that you can kind of see that energy that is there, that is just beautiful. The magician leans into power. What I like is all the power or purple that's here, but then we almost see at the heart of it, with the heart, it looks like a heart to me. Again, you might see something different at the heart of it, right? Because the power is within. That's what this particular coloration, and with that red spot in the middle, really speaks to the magician, at power being within. I love the High Priestess. I get that sense of black and the two pillars, but it feels much more natural. I also feel like I'm underneath the waves, and for me, the power of the High Priestess is in the water, and so that really evokes that energy of the High Priestess for me. Again, with abstract art, what I love about this for a tarot deck, I don't find it often works as well in oracle decks, but it can if there is a system involved and something in place. But when it's just a random deck that doesn't have any system, I don't find that abstract art works as well for me. But in tarot decks, what it does is I know what the High Priestess means. I don't need an image to show me that, and so it sort of gets that the image then gets out of the way of my reading, is how it feels, and it just opens it up, as I think I said earlier, into being this powerful pip-like deck, in the sense that I just can roll with how I would read these cards, and yet there is still things from the art that adds into it. beautiful Empress card. This is interesting to me because you would have thought this would have been something that was more green and verdant, right? But there is just sort of this wash of potential here. You're really just seeing a cleanness. You're definitely seeing a sense of movement, like you can just see the paintbrush just washing across the thing, and there is a sense of just getting started and sort of the openness to create, the space that is needed to create. Like we're putting that first wash of paint on, and it can be created into anything that we want it to be. Here we have the Emperor. I like that we get some squared, structured feel to the Emperor in the painting, because that associates to me with the energy of the structure of the Emperor. While the Queen is laying the foundation for what's going to grow, the Empress energy here, the Emperor is that structure energy, which we also then see in the Kings. Here we have the Wisdom Keeper. I think that this is really powerful here, because this really does have a flow. It feels like I'm looking at sort of the layerings over time, like I'm looking at taking you know, a tree and cutting it in half, or slicing into the side of a mountain, and I'm seeing the different layers that have built up over time. That to me has that idea of a record keeper or somebody with traditions that pass on. But then we really see this red energy at the heart of everything. There is a power and a heart and a passion that comes through handing to the next generation. We just have to be careful that these added layers don't get too solid and rigid, so that it, you know, stifles the passion that's within, which would be the shadow for me of the Hierophant. Here we have the Lovers card. This is about integration. I do like that there are, you know, a few different tones here, but they're all being sort of pulled together. I can see that sort of scraping of the paint, like with a palette knife, and in that pulling that paint down, we're intermingling that paint, and those things need to come together in order for us to make a good decision. All of the pieces need to pull together in a way that feels uniformed and feels harmonious. Here we have the Chariot, very bold. It feels, for me, a little bit more like a Rider-Waite-Smith chariot, and it feels very solid. I'm not a huge fan of solid chariots. I like my chariots to be really movement-oriented, very energetic in movement. This does feel like the Chariot. It just feels like the Rider-Waite-Smith chariot, which is not my favorite expression of the chariot energy, but I can certainly get there, because it's broad, it's so abstract, like I can interpret this in any way that I want. I actually really love the vision here of the Strength card. There is this a very beautiful energy to it, but I like this darkness that's running through it, because again, almost similar to the Lovers card, it's that idea of feeling those things integrating versus being completely separate from each other, that I think is really beautiful. I quite love that. Here we have the Hermit, a lot of bright, almost lime green here, right? So there is a sense of withdrawing in the dark spaces, but then we see that light shining through. The purpose of the withdrawing is for the light to shine through. Here we have the Wheel. I like the motion of this, right? So she's in the painting, you know, you can just see the brush swirling around, and you get that motion of the wheel in the stroke of the paint, which I think is perfection. I love the white coming through in Justice. There is that, okay, we've got this red of emotion. We've even got this purpley color of guidance and things of that nature. We've got some blue there of clarity, but then the white is scraping through it all and saying, let's clear all the emotions off, even clear some of the higher messages coming through. Let's just clear it out and get a clean feel of what really needs to come through. What are those high points that need to be come through, so that we can make our choices here, which I think is gorgeous. You still feel the upside downness, even though there's nothing here that would say that this is an upside down perspective shift. But for me, you still get that feel of something that is hanging. And it's almost like, you know, this is so solid here. And yet when we flip it, we're going to see a new perspective. And I think, again, while it's abstract art, you get the feel of that reversal in the artwork, which is gorgeous. 13 has been changed to, well, obviously 12 has been changed to perspective, which I think is fine. And 13 to initiation, the deaths. She says here, there are many initiations or little deaths that you will experience throughout life. You may be going through what shamans call a dark night of the soul, where a period of illness or darkness leads to healing and light. A time of transition, transformation, and change. A caterpillar turning into a butterfly or a snake shedding its skin. You are being reborn. Death is the ultimate initiation. It is when the soul leaves the physical body and transitions into the next realm. Accept the death of the old and accompanied by an increase in self-awareness and potential. It is an important time of letting go. I love it. Balance for temperance, which I think is really beautiful. I love sort of this standing stone feel. There's definitely movement around it, but there is that sense of this kind of solid foundation standing in harmony with all of the sort of different energies that are around it. Devil has changed to illusion, which I think is interesting and certainly works. We have a lot of illusions about things, and especially about our shadows and our faults. We tend to want to abdicate that over to somebody else's responsibility so that we don't have to take responsibility for our own power and our own actions. And that's living in an illusionary world. We are responsible for our own power. We are responsible for our own decisions. So I think that works. We have the Tower, very crisscrossy energy, almost like cracks or breaking up, where we haven't really seen those kind of harsher line works that I think works really well. Beautiful Star card. I like the motion of it. I like the color tones of it. It's just beautiful. The Moon is also beautiful. You have that almost sense of fogginess, where you can't see things completely clearly, or like you're looking up through the water and seeing the sparkle of lights or stars above. So I think that's really beautiful. The Sun is gorgeous. No naked babies, just bright golds and yellows, like we're really looking at the surface of the sun. The Awakening card is beautiful. I like the use of teal here. I like the use of, it feels like we're on a shoreline here, like we've been washed ashore, and it's just sort of this, we're after the storm. It's been a stormy night, and I feel like we're just awakening to this fresh day on the edge of this island. I don't know. This is beautiful to me. I like the lightness of it. And I like the teal tone. And I love this World card. I think it's just clean and clear and balanced and harmonious. It just feels like a fresh, balanced world. So, again, how one sees abstract art is going to be very varied, right? Everybody's going to have different ways in which they're going to see it. So the aces in this deck are the stars. So I'm gonna, this is kind of like going through a pip deck. So there's not a scene to be looking at here. The color tones, so we kind of going a little bit faster and more like sets of suits. You can really see the predominant color of red, but there's purples in there and turquoises in there. But it really does, that color, the color family used goes across the entire suit, which makes it beautiful and cohesive. So we have the Fire Star, we have the 2 of Fire, the 3, we're still seeing 3 motions here. The 4, same thing. the 5. So it's very pip-like. These really are not difficult to read. You're only needing to learn, I've talked about this in several different videos, you're only needing to know what does the suit of fire mean for you, and you're only needing to know what do the numbers mean to you. So the number 5 is the number of a shake-up number. It's a name of energy that's being broken up. That can be positive or negative depending on what you're looking for in the situation. And so it's really quite simple way to learn tarot, because you're learning the major arcana, which are generally pretty easy to learn. They're archetypal. Their name tells us something about it. And then we're having to just learn 10 numbers, 4 suits, and what those 4 elements mean to you, and then what you're going to do with the court cards. And so it's quite an easy way to read. I think that we get a little bit, some people get a little bit stressed about decks that don't have scenes in them. They're actually a beautiful way to read, and I recommend everybody at least give it a try. It's not for everybody, but it is for many people if you give it a try. Beautiful 6 of fire. The 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 7 running through it. I really like how she has kept almost a feel of pips, but did it in a very abstract way. 8, which also forms sort of a center space. The 9, very dynamic energy. The 10, everything sort of coming together. I like this swoop of purple going through here, because 10 is completion of the suit. And then the court cards. So for me, the court cards speak to how is that energy moving. The pages are fresh, new energy, and you think of a sprite as bright and airy and youthful and a very energetic feel to it. The horses are about movement, or the knights. That makes sense to me. The goddess is the feminine, receptive energy that is there, and setting up your world so that that energy can grow. And then the kings are, in this case the shamans, are that sense of structure and that sort of sense of power over the element, not having the power, the element rule you, which I think works very well with a shaman title. So that was the fire. The wind, let's take a peek at the, oops, the wind. You have sort of a couple breaking in, like with the 9s and the 10s, so I do think there's a bit of a Rider-Waite-Smith. I wish that that was, you know, kept in the same color family. It is, if you look, actually the same color family, but just darkened into the shadow aspect. Of course, that makes sense with the 9 and the 10. The 3 is a little bit that way, but it's not bad at all for me to work with in terms of the way that I read it. Now, 9s are very dynamic, and 10s are full completion, so I can still work with the power being much darker and intense in these. 1 is a little, 10 is a lot, 9 is a lot, but to me that gives a little bit of a hint that they are working from a Rider-Waite-Smith perspective. But again, because it is so open, it doesn't lock me into that as someone who reads numerically versus Rider-Waite-Smith. So we have the wind star. The 2 of winds, very reminiscent of a 2. The 3, you can see the bleeding heart if you work with heartbreak, and it did have those kind of connotations on the bottom, which is again not how I read. Another reason why I wanted to take that off. The 4 of wind, beautiful. 5 is gorgeous, definitely has more of a discordant, less structured feel to it. The 6 of wind is beautiful with that reharmonizing. The 7 coming in. The 8 having a bit of that, this is a get more structured. Her 8's definitely, she's able to get that across. The 9 dynamic. This is also the nightmare card with Rider-Waite-Smith. Again, I can read with that without it. But you can see that even though there aren't scenes, that there are very much telltales for somebody who is comfortable reading the Rider-Waite-Smith. There is hints about what those are within them. And then the 10, where there has been the sense of completion coming full circle, and now it's time for a fresh way to think. We have the wind sprite. Very motiony. I like that feel of it. The horse really has the movement in there. The wind goddess, and then the more structured feeling, squared energy of the Wind Shaman. So then we have, of course, the sea or water. And you can really see, I mean, this looks like watery energy. The color tones are very, very much there. So beautiful sea star. The two of seas being connected. Whoops, sorry. The three, you've got those three dots there that are, we're following along to give us that hint there. The 5, a little more disruptive. Those waves are really rising. The 6, things balance down. The 7s, the 8s feel very pip-like. The 9s, I will say that if you cut everything off, I would probably think, oh no, are these pentacles, just because they kind of look coin-like. But the coloration, I think, really zones you into these seas. The 10 of Cups, you definitely have that arching reminder of the Rider-Waite-Smith 10. And then we have the beautiful Sprite. Gorgeous seahorse. I love that. This is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck. This is a sea goddess, and there's just, this painting is stunning, and I love it. And then the sea shaman. You still get that structure. All of them so far, you've had more of a squared shape that is reminiscent of the emperor energy with the shamans, which I love. So then we get to the earth suit. Which has green tones, right? And the circles are mostly this olivey color. Sometimes we've got that orangey coming in, but it's very earthy and verdant feeling, gorgeously. So here we have the Earth Star. 2 of Earth, very reminiscent of a 2-pip. The 3 of Earth, up almost in the trees. The 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, very structured, the 9, the 10, looks like all things have come into fruition. Beautiful earth sprite. Love the motion of the ball feeling like it's rolling with the horse. Gorgeous, almost tree energy feel of the earth goddess. The goddesses are gorgeous. And then the shaman, everything is at one with the earth. You almost look like you have a horizon line in a dark forest, and the meadow on the outside. It's just really beautiful. So I know that's much quicker than normal, but they are, you know, abstract and far more pip-like, and so it's a little quicker to go through them. I, again, have used this deck a lot, and I really have, you know, see, look, even trimming this, I don't know that I'm going to be able to, I don't think I'm going to still be able to riffle shuffle it. This is a large deck, so can you imagine? Okay, I can get it there, but that's definitely still very, very hard. I'm going to try a corner next, which I couldn't even really do with the other one very well. So let's try to go to the corners, because I can now get my hands around it a little bit better. So you can kind of get that drop corner going to bring it in. See how beautiful, though, that when it starts to mix the sides, it's not as garish as it looks when it is out in its chunked forms. There we go. So the corners are definitely easier for me to do now that I can get a hold of the deck a little bit better, so that's great. Let me do some overhand, and same thing with overhand. Even overhand was difficult for me in its uncut form, so I'm really happy, because I don't want, you know, it's all preference, right? But sometimes these types of things, and we talked about this a lot even with the El Goliath Tarot, that it's not that there's anything wrong with I'm trying to get a really good mix here to get started. It's not that there's anything wrong with having a large deck, but if the size of it combined with maybe the thickness of the stock, if that stops you from reaching for the deck because you just know it's going to be awkward to shuffle, It's not going to shuffle up well for you. Then I have other decks, right? Most of us have a bit of a collection. Not all, but most of us here have a bit of a collection. And if something is going to stop me from reaching for an otherwise beautiful deck, then it's, for me, does not speak of disrespect to the creator for me to make it so that it will work better for me. It just means that I actually really love this deck and I like working with it, so I got to try to make it so that I am not hesitant to reach for this deck for a reading from a client. And so I'm really happy with how this has turned out, because again, even in its trimmed form, it is quite a handful. Oops. And I think it is a combination, the size, the gloss, the lamination on it, the thickness of the cards. It's just a combination of all of those things. Okay, so let me pull. So we have the Seahorse, we have the Fire Goddess, and here we have the Seven of Earth. This deck I'm generally pulling 3 cards with for like a Port in the Storm reading, and then I'm going to pull some other cards, or with a Journey with Grief reading, which is 3 cards. Given its size, it's really a great one to do that with. So we would have the Seahorse here, this movement. Okay, we know that it's water. We know that we're talking about the Knight of Water, this sense of movement forward. This is energy that should be moving. This just shouldn't be stagnant energy here. What is it moving towards? It's moving towards the fulfillment of our creative energy, of that transformative energy of fire. We need to move our emotions and our heart towards creating a space for ourselves so that our creative energy can grow. And then we have to have the patience to let that grow, right? With the Seven of Earth. Sevens for me are number 4 plus 3. So it's that when we get that foundation set, then the energy is able to grow. But we've got to allow that to get solid and have that opportunity to grow. So we do have to put a little bit of a patience in the mix, right? So there you have it. I hope that this was something that was enjoyable for you to watch, both working with how I might trim a deck down, and also with seeing this beautiful deck, because I do think it's stunning. I think it is abstract, but it is abstract in the sense, though, that there is deliberate motion here. She isn't just slapping paint. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because pure abstract, how is the paint going to move, is something that I absolutely love to work with. But there is intention here. The elements, the number of the card shows up in there, and in the motion of the paint. This is very deliberately done and very artistically and beautifully done. And so again, I've already used this deck a lot. I love to work with it. It really provides a beautiful and evocative and intuitive space for me to read the way that I read in, and that leaves that expansiveness there, but also gives you those cue-ins. So to me, it's like that perfect sweet spot for a deck. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I wish you an absolutely wonderful day.